Hi guys, today's video I'll be doing an analysis on the sand, which is the GLS along the Souza Avenue. So why I think this plot is quite interesting, because this will be the cheapest RCR plot for 2025. And on top of that, it is cheaper than Bloomsbury residences. In this video, I'll be covering on the nearby resale projects. One of them recently TOP, which is the Verdale, and the second one is Park Natura. After I do the comparisons, you can see whether this area is worth your consideration or not. So for those of you after watching this video, if you like what I share and the way I analyze the project, you can feel free to scan the QR code, or you can reach out to me via WhatsApp at 84849302. We should be expecting a preview for the sand to start in a couple of weeks time. Alright, looking forward to hear from you guys. This area, which is the sand along the Souza Avenue, this will be the plot that we are going to be talking about later on. And for the two resale examples that I'm going to be sharing, first one will be Park Natura, which is adjacent from the sand, and the second one will be Verdale, which is also the recent TOP project. The area itself, the sand definitely over here is not that near Beauty World MRT. It's going to be quite a distance away. We're looking at about 1 km kind of distance. So for your own pace, you kind of need to gauge how long you need to take to walk 1 km. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the developer was able to get this plot quite cheap. Now we take a look in the area itself on Google Maps. So this is the actual site. You can see right now we are all surrounded by greenery. Then this is the landed cluster, Park Natura over here, and then we have Verdale over here. And then now when we look at the URA master plan, this is quite interesting because it's already zoned as a residential, which is a plot right beside the sand, and here is a reserve site. So at least this gives you an insight, right, as to what to expect if you actually want to consider this particular development. For this area, it's definitely not within 1 km of Pei Hua Primary. I think other than that, for the other primary schools, we need to wait for developers' confirmation on that. So this one, you need to stay tuned for more information. I'm going to be talking more on the land bid prices for the Souza Avenue, the sand. So you can see here we have $841 PSF PPR, and it closed with 2 bids at July 18, 2024. This project, this is on a 207,000 square feet land, and this one can yield up to 355 units. And one unique thing about this particular development is that the URA also require an early childhood development center. So this one is also known as childcare center. And this will be 5,382 square feet as part of the tender requirements. And also for this particular plot, there's only 2 bidders. And for sustained land, they actually bid 22.3% higher than the second bid. So do you think the bidder actually overbid for this particular plot? Or when you see this 841 PSF PPR and then you compare to the current launches, current land bids, do you think the developer actually overpaid? You can let me know in the comment sections. And if you guys actually reference towards Beauty World, that side, you have reserved residences, 8 at BT, the link at Beauty World. So for all these projects, you already know what PSF they're going for. And this particular plot, 841 PSF PPR, I do foresee a quite interesting entry price for this particular plot. Other than talking about D21 pricing, right, just to give you a sensing of why I actually say this is a very cheap plot for RCR, you can see based on the EC pricing, right. So for EC, this is the Pasir Ris plot. It's already at 728 PSF PPR. We are looking at about 1,006, 1,007 PSF upon launch. The next one is Auto Place. So this is at the Plantation Close area. So the land plot was at 701 PSF PPR. Launch range should be 1,005 to 1,006 range. And this is a recent launch, Orel of Tampines. This one at 721 PSF PPR. Average price sold here was 1,766 PSF, and then the highest transacted is at 1,789 PSF. Last but not least, we have the Tampines West EC plot. So this one is bidded at 768 PSF PPR. The PSF range for launch, I also estimate it to be in the 1,007 PSF range. So when you compare to all these EC plots, right, they already almost hit the $800 PSF PPR range for the land bids. Then I would think for the sand being an RCR plot in D21, which is Beauty World area, it does make sense in terms of pricing. Of course, it's not going to be that near MRT, but in terms of locale, it's very, very different. after comparing with the EC pricing, right, now we want to take a look at the upcoming OCR prices. First up, we have the Upper Thomson Road, which is also known as Springleaf Residences. This one is already higher PSF at 905 PSF PPR, and I estimate the pricing to be in the 1009 to 2000 range. Next one, Canberra MRT area, which is Canberra Crescent Residences. This one also very close, 793 PSF PPR. The range should be in the 1007, 1008 range also. For the next plot, which is at Tampines West MRT area, Tampines Street 94, this is a mixed development, and at 1004 PSF PPR, we estimate the launch price to be in the 2.1k, 2.2k range, and even up to 2.3k. Faber Walk, so this is along Clementi area. It's not near MRT, although the upcoming Jurong Regional Line will be much nearer, but for now we are not expecting near MRT prices. That's why we have $900 PSF PPR, and the launch price should be around $2,000 per square feet. Even in the OCR region, we are already expecting all these benchmark prices much higher than the Sand. This makes the Sand actually a good entry price. This one is for you guys to decide. Next up, we're gonna have the 2025 RCR launches. First up, we have the Margaret Drive. So for Margaret Drive, right, this is near Queenstown MRT, and this is also known as Penrith, right? This is 1154 PSF PPR, so I estimate the launch price to be from 2004 2005 onwards, but do bear in mind this is a high-rise development up to 40 floor. It might even hit like Ori pricing of $3,000 per square feet, so don't be surprised by that. And next up, we have Bloomsbury Residences. So this one is the Media Circle plot, and this one is at 1191 PSF PPR. You can see the launch prices transacted at between $2,300 to $2,700 per square feet. And last but not least, we have Linden Woods. So for Linden Woods, right, this is also not a GLS plot and it's not harmonized. Do bear in mind, I expect the PSF can go up to $2,700 per square feet. But you must also remember, if you want to compare the Sand towards Linden Woods or even Bloomsbury to Linden Woods, right, you need to account for the GFA harmonization. Just want to talk a little bit more about the recent launches at D21 because this is in the same district. So for reserve residences, right, on the launch weekend, it sold about 70%. Okay, and also 8 at BT, which is also right beside Beauty World MRT. This one sold 53% on launch weekend at an average PSF of $2,700. I can understand for this area, of course, it's more prime as compared to the Sand because the Sand is about 1 km away from all the hawker center, the eateries, and I think the Sand is not within 1 km of the Pei Hua. And I know a lot of families looking at this area, they should be aiming for this primary school. But for you guys, that is more of, you want this area but you don't require the school, you just like the lifestyle here, the Bukit Timah Hill, all that. This can be something you potentially can explore because of the entry price and the land bid price. Now I'll be doing the comparison for the Sand versus Park Natura, which is a freehold project, and Verdale. So you can see for the Sand, this is a 99-year plot, and I expect TOP to be in 2029, D21, and 355 units on 207,000 square feet of land. Okay. Next up, we have new one, which is Verdale. This is also a 99-year lease plot, TOP 2023, D21, 258 units on 153,000 square feet of land. Last but not least, we have Park Natura. So this one will be the closest development from the Sand, and this is a freehold development, TOP 2011. And do bear in mind, because they are across the street, right, this is considered D23 already, 192 units and 213,000 square feet of land. So later on in the comparisons, we can see whether Verdale or Park Natura perform better over the past few years. And also for the pricing, right, you can take Verdale as a very strong price support, but do bear in mind this is pre-harmonization, and Park Natura, even the pricing is close, it is still a freehold land. Next up, I'll be sharing a little bit more about Verdale. This was back in 2020 when it actually launched. 15% of the units sold on the launch weekend. And back then when they bought the land in 2018, they bought it at 1002 PSF PPR, and do remember that this is a pre-harmonization plot. So honestly, when I look at this PSF back in 2018, right, even if you account for the 8% difference in the harmonization, it does look like you are buying almost 2018 pricing. when you compare to the Sen at 800 plus PSF PPR. Now I'll be talking more about Verdale in detail. Over here is at RCR D21 TOP 2023 and 99 years. So the land size 153,000 square feet, plot ratio of 1.4 and total number of units 258. Next up, let's take a look at the residential analysis over here. We have a very strong local demand in this area, 86% coming from Singaporeans, 11% from PR, and about 1 to 2% from foreigners. This is the site plan for Verdale, actually quite standard. For this development, right, don't expect it to be high rise. Very likely for the plot ratio, we're going to be expecting maybe up to 7 floor, 6 floor at most. Because for Verdale is also a low rise development. But at least for Verdale, right, they still have the lap pool. So it'll be quite interesting to see what the Sen can actually come up with slightly bigger plot of land. Next up, we have Park Natura. So Park Natura also in the RCR region. So this is already considered a different district at D23. TOP 2011, freehold, 213,000 square feet of land, plot ratio 1.4. Number of units 192. So same thing here, I'll be taking a look at the residential analysis. We have a very strong local demand portion as well. We have 79% Singaporeans, 14% PR, 5% foreigner, and we have 1% of company holdings. So for the exit strategy for local demand is still very strong over here. Next up, we have the site plan for Park Natura, and very clearly, right, you can see when you compare to Verdale, there's already a lot more water features over here at Park Natura, and on top of that, they also have a tennis court here. I'll be quite interested to see what the Sen can actually do. Will they be able to come up with a tennis court for that number of units? Because for Park Natura, the number of units is significantly lesser, so it'll be quite interesting to see how the developer actually want to plan the site plan. And I think all this is quite important because if you are a buyer in the resale market in 2029 or 2030, I'm sure you'll be comparing between Park Natura, Verdale, and even the Sen. If, like, let's say the Sen, you don't have a tennis court, but just right across the street, you have a development that is freehold, similar PSF, and have a tennis court. So all these things, I think it does matter when you have a resale comparison nearby. Okay, right now I'll be doing the technical analysis, right, for both Verdale and Park Natura to see which project actually have more profits. First up, we have the Verdale, and we'll be looking at the profits over here. The profits range from 400,000 all the way to 100,000. And you can see for the bigger bedrooms, usually they will have higher profits in this region. Lowest one will be coming from the one bedder, looking at 113,000. So two bedders, you should be looking in the range of between 100k to 200k range. Three bedders, 300k and above. And for reference, I'll be using Verdale, right, in terms of the transacted PSF as a resale support price. So for this, I would say when you compare to the Sen, both they are 99 years, and to be honest, they are going to be very, very close in terms of age. So for resale buyers in the market, maybe 5 years down the road, I would say you have to compare very closely to Verdale and make sure that you are buying something in the resale market that has a unique selling point. Because if, for example, the project, it doesn't stand out, it doesn't have any USP as compared to Verdale, then I don't think it's going to be that attractive because Verdale is still closer towards the beauty world side, whereas the Sen is slightly further away. But if the pricing, all this does make sense, I still think the Sen is something you can consider, because here the highest resale pricing we already have 2,198 PSF. Of course, this is pre-harmonization. You just need to adjust the PSF down, and then the lowest PSF transacted we have 1871. Do imagine if the Sen actually launching in this price range, I still think it's quite attractive. And this will form kind of my price ceiling for entering the Sen, because if you already know what the resale is selling at, then you adjust after the harmonization. Just make sure as long as the pricing, site plan, floor plan, and maybe the stack facing makes sense, then you should be entering a safe project and safe unit as well. Next up, we also can see for Park Natura. So for Park Natura, I'll be looking at the holding period of between 3 to 4 years, because this will very likely mean that they enter the market between 2020 to 2021. Those that enter much earlier, I won't be comparing because it's not going to be an accurate comparison. And for that, we can see, right, for the profit margin, for those that enter from 2020, 2021 and exited along these past 2 years, we are looking at a profit of between 300 plus thousand up to 1 million. Of course, this one you need to bear in mind how much they enter at. So the purchase price was at 2.1 million and 1.9 million respectively. And then for Verdale, you can see most of the purchase prices for the higher profits, we are looking at 1.7, 1.6 million range. Profits is quite impressive from Park Natura as well, considering we have an age gap of about 12 years from Verdale. After seeing the profits from Park Natura and Verdale, do you think buying a resale makes more sense or buying a new launch makes more sense? Now let's take a look, right, when Verdale actually launched, how much was Park Natura selling at? You can see based on the chart, from Park Natura versus Verdale, we have about 37% in terms of price gap. And fast forward to today, 2025, Verdale actually have an appreciation of about 18%. But Park Natura actually achieved an impressive 63%. And you see today's pricing, we are looking at about 17% gap only from Verdale versus Park Natura. Actually, when you see, right, the percentage growth, it does seem like, wow, Park Natura performed very, very well, 63% in terms of price growth. But is this actually the case reflected in the profits? Because just now you saw, actually some of the units, the profit margin for Verdale is still quite similar to what we see at Park Natura. One thing I want to point out is that why Park Natura actually had such low PSF, right? Because some of the units, when you see the layout, they have the multiple roof terrace, and on top of that, the balcony is very, very big. So a lot of these are the penthouse units at Park Natura. I've been there before. I've done for a couple of landlords over there. So I know for this area, right, the people, you are actually facing very close to the other block, and on top of that, you have a lot of outdoor space. The large PSF range, right, will be depending on the layout, because some of them, if you are taking the penthouse units, of course the PSF is going to be much lower. But then if you take for the lower floor units, which is all indoors, right, the layout is, the PSF is definitely going to be much higher as compared to those with the huge balcony and open roof terrace. For Park Natura, I'm not going to be using the 60+% growth as the main metric of comparison lah. So that's why I just now talk about the profits comparison. I'll be using more of that because it is a more realistic comparison. If not, because for that, right, you can still see the difference between 3 years and 4 years pricing for the exact same layout. I think that will be a fairer comparison. Then you will compare using the percentage from those 3 units that sold in Park Natura to calculate the percentage gain as compared to Verdale. What does this tell me about Park Natura versus Verdale? I still think the reason why Park Natura was able to perform in the resale market even in the past 2 years is because when you compare the site plans for Park Natura versus Verdale, you can see that actually Park Natura does stand out in certain sense. They have additional facilities like the tennis court, and they got additional swimming pool. Although they are 12 years apart, in terms of site plan, right, I still think Park Natura has certain unique selling points. And also when you compare in terms of the lease, one is freehold, one is 99 years. I still see some families or buyers, they prefer the freehold status, especially in D21, D23 area. When you also know the differences between Park Natura and Verdale, you need to know if the Sand, right, which is this upcoming launch at the Souza Avenue, you need to know if it actually stands out versus these two projects. Minimally, it must be comparable to Park Natura and it should be better than Verdale. If not, I would expect a similar price performance for the Sand using Verdale as the gauge. If you are looking at purely profit margins, you also need to factor in that Verdale was actually a progressive payment scheme, whereas Park Natura, you're already paying the full monthly installment. Of course, you need to compare whether you're renting it out versus you're buying the Verdale unit through the construction period. And on top of that, if buying Verdale results you in renting a place, you also need to factor in renting costs, which is going to be the similar situation at the Sand as well. Okay, next up, I'm going to be covering on the demand and supply for 1 km radius around Verdale. Okay, so for Verdale, I'm looking at condos without any new projects. So this one is the 3 bidders within past 1 years. So you can see here we have 24 projects with 112 past transactions and 24 resale projects with 100 listings. The demand and supply we are looking at is quite healthy, 112 versus 100. So the ratio is 1.12. It means that for every unit that is on the market, very likely there will be 1.12 transactions. For this area, for the 3 bidders, the demand versus the replacement rate for 1 km within Verdale is quite healthy, and this is definitely within the radius for the sand as well. Alright, so now for the last part, what determines a good entry price? Just now as I mentioned, my whole methodology, I'll be heavily relying on Verdale as the price support and price ceiling for entry towards the sand, and also I'll be comparing in terms of site plan towards Park Natura and Verdale as well. Of course, if you can see, Park Natura already is a better product compared to Verdale in terms of the site plans. I'll be looking forward to what the sand developers actually can produce, and at the same time, recent EC plots that's already launched and the OCR pricing and also the RCR pricing. Alright, with that, I hope you enjoyed the video and the data analysis that I've done. So if you like similar kind of content, you can check out my YouTube channel for the other new launches that I've done for the upcoming 2025 launches. And also you can leave a like and subscribe so that this can also reach out to people that will benefit from this content. And last but not least, if you like a personalized consultation for yourself, or you feel like this project, the sand, is something that you can consider, feel free to scan the QR code or reach out to me via WhatsApp at 8484-9302. I'll be looking forward to hear from you guys. Alright, bye!